We're connected to Shany Mor. Dr. Mor is a foreign policy lecturer and senior researcher at the BICOM organisation. Shany, I know the line wasn't great. Are we connected okay? Can you hear me all right?
I hear you fine. Do you hear me?
We do indeed. That's absolutely clear. Okay. So I know that we're all a bit in the dark here, unless you've got any particular wisdom on this. Do you know either what the problem is or what sort of problem that has caused Mr. Netanyahu to cancel or postpone the cabinet meeting?
Regarding the hiccup that's just in the last few minutes, I don't know any details about what that is. There's some conflicting claims about a change in last-minute conditions and conflicting denials from various spokespersons. I don't have even the basis for speculating what that is. I can only assume that that's a last-minute kink and that it'll be ironed out quite shortly.
Is it quite typical, in these kind of high-stakes moments? I suppose any of the two parties who've been brought together over a period of many, many months will try and jostle for last-minute advantage. Could it be put down to that?
There's precedent for that. There was certainly a famous incident with a missing signature on an agreement between Israel and the PLO with Yasser Arafat back in 1995. But I'd be surprised if it really came down to this. It would be unusual if the United States, and not just the United States, but also Qatar and Egypt, made announcements about a deal having been agreed to, and then to discover that there's something that has been left open, especially when the deal leaves so many things open for the second and third stages. I mean, as we understand it, we in the public, the first of three stages is pretty specific in what the deal outlines. There's a bit of ambiguity regarding the second stage and the third stage, in particular that on the 16th day of the first stage negotiations begin regarding the second stage. So it would seem to be surprising that there's some kind of problem regarding the first stage, but who knows?
Who knows indeed. I mean, one thing to reflect on, I suppose, is the politics of Israel and the politics of the cabinet and the politics of the prime minister. He has a far from united team around him just now.
That's certainly true. However, I wouldn't put too much importance on that. He has a few far-right partners who vocally oppose it and some others who are at least quite lukewarm to this. But he does have a majority in the cabinet to get any kind of deal through, and he doesn't have any problem if he needs to get any kind of approval through Parliament either. I don't think his domestic trouble is fateful in this case.
Okay.
Although it certainly is a source of pressure. All
right, let's take it at face value. This thing does go ahead. Let's go down that hypothesis or work on that basis. Right. What do you take of the structure of the deal, particularly this first 6 weeks? Is it deliverable, do you think?
I think the first stage is deliverable for both sides. I'm a bit more cautious and pessimistic about the second and especially the third stages. The first stage, really, almost every apparent concession that is being made by both sides is actually things that both of the belligerent parties in this war would be pretty eager to do. It's not terribly costly for them. Where things get a bit more complicated is in the second stage. That involves the substantial territorial withdrawals from Israel, and it involves for Hamas releasing the last living hostages that it has, which are in this sort of gruesome and macabre reality we've come to accept for some reason since the 7th of October, its main bargaining chip.
Right, and the fear would be, as I read the detail of this announcement, that if you can't get agreement to go from phase 1 to phase 2, you're stuck with phase 1 for the time being, or at least that would be the hope, the ambition. Is that a? I guess that's written down more in hope than expectation, is it?
Right, that's a realistic scenario. It's one that would be very disappointing, obviously, first and foremost, to the families of the Israeli hostages. It would be very disappointing to the Americans that have mediated this agreement and proposed it in very similar terms already back in May, both to the outgoing administration and the incoming administration. But it's a distinct possibility. I don't know that it's the most likely one, but it's a distinct possibility that the negotiations begin for the second stage, and the gaps between the two sides become unbridgeable. The first stage, though, I imagine, should be pretty straightforward to implement.
Shany, thank you very much indeed for your contribution. Dr. Shany Mor, a foreign policy lecturer, senior researcher at BICOM.